It was just after dawn on December 21st, 1970, when Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, stood alone at the White House gate. Dressed in a purple velvet tunic, dark pants, and amber-tinted aviator sunglasses, he clutched a small cardboard box of toiletries and a letter he had written on American Airlines stationery. The guards were taken aback by the sight of the legendary singer, but Elvis was determined. He had a mission. Elvis had left his home in Memphis in a fury. His wife, Priscilla, and her father, Vernon, had tried to reason with him, but he reacted with disbelief and then vanished. For the first time in years, he took off on his own, flying to Washington, D.C., on a commercial flight. He had no cash, no luggage, and barely knew his own phone number, but he was on a quest. In the letter he carried, Elvis asked President Richard Nixon to make him a federal agent at large. He wanted to help fight the war on drugs and reach out to young people. The drug culture, the hippie elements, the SDS, Black Panthers, etc. Do not consider me as their enemy or as they call it the establishment. I call it America and I love it, Elvis wrote. He even mentioned that he had a gift for the president. After delivering the letter, Elvis and his friend Jerry Schilling returned to their hotel. Later, Elvis tried to get a badge from the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, but had no luck. Meanwhile, Nixon's staff saw this as a political opportunity and quickly prepared memos for the president. By 12:30 p.m., Elvis was in the Oval Office, facing the president himself. The meeting was surreal. Elvis, in his full regalia, was a sight to behold. He wore a military-style jacket like a cape, a gold belt with a massive buckle, and a tree of life necklace with the names of his friends engraved on the branches. He was stoned and wearing makeup, but his charm and sincerity were undeniable. Nixon, initially nonplussed, soon found himself intrigued by the rock star's offer to help with the anti-drug campaign. Elvis warned Nixon about the Beatles, calling them anti-American. He talked about his studies of communist brainwashing and his ability to connect with young people. I've been studying this for over 10 years now, and I can go right into a group of hippies and young people and be accepted, Elvis said. Nixon, curious and perhaps a bit confused, promised Elvis the coveted badge. Elvis was overjoyed. He hugged the president, a gesture that stunned the room. Nixon, perhaps feeling the weight of the moment, opened a drawer and handed Elvis and his friends presidential tie clasps and pins. Elvis, emboldened, started rummaging through the drawer, finding more souvenirs. When Elvis returned to Graceland, he was exultant. He splurged on Christmas gifts, including 4 Mercedeses. He had left his gift for Nixon a World War II Colt, .45 with 7 silver bullets behind at the security gate, but he was already planning his next move. With his new badge, Elvis felt invincible. He started pulling over speeding drivers, offering assistance at accident scenes and breaking up fights. He was living out his childhood fantasy of being a cop and a hero. But beneath the bravado, there were signs that Elvis was struggling. His drug use had increased, and he was becoming more dependent on uppers, downers, and pain relievers. He was a man torn between his past and his present, a boy from Tennessee who had become a legend but still felt the need to prove himself. The line between reality and fantasy was blurring, and the king was losing his grip. Elvis's behavior was changing. He carried guns and badges, and he demanded to be the center of attention. At Sonny West's wedding, he carried 5 guns in his fur cloth suit and insisted that everyone leave the reception to go to Graceland. Later, he took the entire party to the Memphian Theater to watch movies. Priscilla, his wife, was growing increasingly concerned. Elvis was treating her badly, staying away from home for weeks at a time, and she was beginning to see that the man she loved was becoming a stranger. Elvis was a complex figure, a man who had lived his dreams but was now struggling to find his place in the world. The line between the king of rock and roll and the man who needed constant validation was becoming dangerously thin. As the night fell on Graceland, Elvis sat in his room, surrounded by his badges and guns, and wondered what the future held. Vernon Presley, Elvis's dad, stood on the sidelines, watching his son's wild performances with a mix of pride and worry. Vernon had lived a hard life for the first 40 years, struggling with poverty. When Elvis became famous, Vernon was suddenly thrust into a world of luxury, but his Depression-era habits made it hard for him to adjust. He was careful with money, but he also enjoyed the finer things in life, like expensive suits and jewelry. Elvis trusted Vernon to manage his finances because he knew his dad was good with money and wouldn't be easily fooled by others. Vernon's role was to keep Graceland running smoothly and make sure Elvis didn't go bankrupt. He was always on edge, fearing a return to the hard times they had known. This fear made him even more dependent on Colonel Parker, Elvis's manager. Colonel Parker was a shrewd businessman who knew how to make money, but he also had a dark side. He treated everything Elvis's music, movies, and merchandise like commodities to be sold for the highest price. He didn't understand or care about Elvis's artistic vision. Elvis and Vernon trusted Colonel Parker because he was from the South and seemed to understand them. But this trust kept them in a tight grip, even when Elvis wanted to break free. The Colonel's influence was damaging. He didn't guide Elvis's artistic growth. He just focused on making money. Elvis was left to navigate his fame alone without the guidance he needed. In 1973, things came to a head. Elvis got frustrated with the Colonel and fired him during a show in Las Vegas. The Colonel calmly said he would send a bill for expenses. When the bill came, it was for $2 million. Elvis and Vernon were shocked and had to back down. They didn't realize that many other managers would have paid that much just to work with Elvis. The Colonel had them under his control. Elvis continued to perform at a grueling pace, doing long tours and multiple shows in Las Vegas. He felt like he had to keep working to pay for everything: his family, his staff, his friends. The more he performed, the more tired and bored he became. His shows started to feel disjointed, and he grew to hate Las Vegas. He needed more and more drugs to keep going, and his health suffered. Despite his success, Elvis felt incredibly alone. No one around him truly understood what he was going through. He was the king, but he was also a lonely man. People always wanted something from him: favors, money, gifts. Even his family members made demands, and sometimes their behavior embarrassed him. He tried to be the Elvis that people wanted, but it became harder and harder. He started to make fun of his own image, interrupting serious songs with jokes. This made his performances feel less genuine and more like a show. Elvis's drug use became a major problem. He needed them to feel like the king, but they were also destroying him. His doctor tried to help, but Elvis found other ways to get the drugs he wanted. He gained weight and his health declined. He still tried to meet his commitments, but his performances were often lackluster. Sometimes he forgot lyrics, or even fell asleep on stage. Elvis's last shows were a mix of pain and brilliance. He poured his heart into songs like Unchained Melody and How Great Thou Art, but he also rambled and lost focus. He wrote notes to himself, feeling lost and alone, seeking help from God. His last performance in Indianapolis in June 1977 was a powerful moment, but it was also the end of an era. Elvis's life was a complex mix of success, loneliness, and the struggle to stay true to himself. He was a king, but he was also just a man, trying to find his way in a world that wanted to define him. Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, struggled with his son's growing problems, especially his drug use. Vernon was in the hospital after a heart attack in 1975, and he lashed out at Elvis, saying he was the reason for his heart attack. He also accused Elvis of worrying his mother to death. These harsh words must have deeply hurt Elvis, who was already in a fragile state. Around this time, everyone could see that Elvis was in trouble, but it was hard for people to accept it. Linda Thompson, a Memphis beauty queen, tried to take care of Elvis. She stayed by his side, even when he was in the hospital. They had a long relationship after Priscilla left, but eventually Linda felt overwhelmed by Elvis's neediness and decided to leave in late 1976. She realized she couldn't save him. Elvis then found Ginger Alden, a much younger woman who was half his age. She was less experienced with his fame and found it hard to understand him. Elvis wanted to marry her, but he was unsure about her feelings. This uncertainty made him frustrated and clingy. He felt that no one could truly love him for who he was, not just for being Elvis Presley. In 1976, RCA sent a mobile recording unit to Graceland because Elvis wouldn't go to Nashville. The sessions didn't go well. Elvis was distracted and couldn't hit the right notes. He managed to record a few good songs, including a powerful version of Hurt. His last recording session was in the Jungle Room in October 1976. Elvis barely cooperated, but he still managed to record Pledging My Love, a song that reminded him of the 1950s. As time went on, Elvis wanted fewer people around him. He spent more time alone, often staying in his bedroom with the windows covered to block out the light. Sometimes he rode his horse for hours around Graceland. When he was awake, he often read metaphysical and spiritual books. He kept Khalil Gibran's The Prophet by his bed, a book he had loved since 1956. Elvis continued to have nightmares about being abandoned. His health worsened, and he had been hospitalized several times for drug detox. He overdosed 3 times in 1 year, but insisted he was in control. He refused to stop taking drugs or see a psychiatrist. Billy Smith, Elvis's younger cousin, was one of the few people who stayed close to him. Billy and his wife lived in a trailer in the backyard of Graceland. They spent hours talking, and sometimes laughed over Monty Python routines. Elvis also shared his paranoid thoughts with Billy. Elvis was upset about a book being written by Sonny and Red West, his former bodyguards. They had been loyal friends for years, but Red had tried to talk to Elvis about his drug use in 1975. Elvis seemed to listen, but then said he would do what he wanted. When Vernon fired Red and Sonny, they felt betrayed and decided to write a book exposing Elvis's drug problem. The book, Elvis: What Happened, came out in August 1977, and Elvis was deeply shaken. He was worried his fans would turn on him, and was preparing to explain his drug use to them if needed. Elvis was dieting for his next tour, which was set to begin in Portland, Maine, on August 17, 1977. On August 15th, he didn't eat much and went to the dentist that night. In the early hours of August 16th, he played racquetball with Billy, Joe, and Ginger. He was tired and out of shape, so they mostly fooled around. Later, he played the piano and sang a few songs before going to bed. Billy helped him wash and dry his hair and left at 7. The last thing Elvis said to Billy was, "This is going to be my best tour ever." Elvis couldn't sleep and stayed up reading in the bathroom. Ginger found him on the floor early in the afternoon. His heart had stopped, and he was pronounced dead at the hospital after an hour and a half of trying to revive him. He had 14 different drugs in his system, which had likely contributed to his death. Elvis's death was a shock to the world. 50,000 fans came to Graceland to pay their respects. The funeral was a grand event, with a long service at Graceland and a procession of white limousines. Colonel Parker, wearing a baseball cap and seersucker pants, was there, and he immediately tried to extend his management deal with Elvis's estate. Vernon, in his grief, signed the agreement, but it was later overturned by the courts. Elvis's story is one of a brilliant talent, struggling with the weight of fame and personal demons. He was haunted by fears of rejection and loss, and his excesses were both his genius and his curse. Despite his flaws, he remains one of the most beloved figures in music history. As I conclude my journey into the life of Elvis Presley, I feel a deep sense of gratitude for the many sources that have enriched this exploration. Elaine Dundy's Elvis and Gladys was particularly insightful, offering a vivid portrait of Elvis's mother, Gladys, and the early years in Tupelo, Mississippi, where Elvis's story began. Gene Smith, Elvis's cousin, shared his memories in Elvis's Man Friday, providing a personal and detailed account of those formative years. Bill E. Burke, who knew Elvis from the early days, also contributed significantly with his books that included photos and stories from Tupelo and Humes High School, where Elvis's friendships and musical interests started to take shape. Ernst Jorgensen's Elvis Presley, A Life in Music, is a comprehensive chronology that delves into Elvis's recording sessions, offering a deep understanding of his musical journey. June Juanico's memoir, Elvis, in the Twilight of Memory, is a heartfelt and moving account of her relationship with Elvis during the summer of 1956, a time when his fame was just beginning to soar. Egil Krog's The Day Elvis Met Nixon is a precise and fascinating account of Elvis's visit to the White House in 1970, complete with photos that capture the unique and memorable event. Grail Marcus's Mystery Train is a brilliant exploration of Elvis's talent and its impact on American culture, while Dave Marsh's Elvis provides a deep understanding of Elvis's character, both as a Southerner and an American hero. Alfred Wertheimer's Elvis 56 is a collection of some of the most penetrating photographs of Elvis, taken during a pivotal time in his career. I spent hours poring over these images, especially the series at Audubon Drive, trying to imagine what Elvis's life was like during those early years. Becky Yancey's My Life with Elvis offers a unique perspective on life at Graceland, particularly the role of Elvis's father, Vernon. Her insights provided a richer understanding of the family dynamics that shaped Elvis's life. The story of Elvis meeting the Beatles was pieced together from various sources, including the Beatles anthology and Chris Hutchins's Elvis Meets the Beatles. These accounts brought to life the excitement and camaraderie of that historic meeting. I am deeply grateful to the individuals who welcomed me and shared their knowledge. Jack Reed SR and Jack Reed Jr. at Gumtree Bookstore in Tupelo, Mississippi, and Leon Riley at the Tupelo Hardware Store, where Elvis bought his first guitar, were invaluable in helping me understand Elvis's early years. Charles Reagan Wilson at the Center for Southern Culture Studies in Oxford, Mississippi, and Jennifer Ford and Lee McWhite at the Special Collections at the Williams Library at the University of Mississippi provided crucial resources. Special thanks to Paul Yandel, who toured with Elvis as a guitarist for the Louvin Brothers in 1955-56. His anecdotes and eyewitness accounts of Elvis's early performances were invaluable, especially since that period is not well documented on film. I also want to thank Michael Bertrand, Erica Brady, Jerry Crutchfield, Alan Fessmeyer, Wade Hall, Beverly Halpern, Lamar Heron, Aaron Hutchings, June Juanico, Grail Marcus, Dave Marsh, Guy Menz, Corey and Cheryl Messler, Elena Nash, Christopher Shea, and Charles K. Wolfe for their contributions and support. This journey has been both enlightening and deeply personal. Through the stories and insights of those who knew Elvis, I have gained a richer and more nuanced understanding of a man who left an indelible mark on American culture. Elvis's life continues to resonate, and his legacy lives on in the hearts of his fans and the music that changed the world.